Welcome everybody to the new year and to the strange and scary mysteries of the month, where we find the creepiest true crime stories from all around the world currently going down and lay them out here for you to check out. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here are the strange and scary mysteries of the month for January 2025. Number 5. Hunted in the Heartland. The town of New Lisbon, Wisconsin, which is nestled in the heart of Juneau County, is known for its serene landscapes and close-knit community. But on December 30th of 2024, a gruesome discovery turned this small town into the epicenter of a manhunt involving federal agencies. That morning, New Lisbon Police Chief Kyle Walker received a frantic call about a missing child, a 13-year-old girl who hadn't returned home. The girl's father had tracked her phone to a house on West Bridge Street that belonged to 47-year-old Virgil Thu's mother, where he lived as her caretaker, along with his girlfriend, 33-year-old Elizabeth Kolba, and his 12-year-old daughter from his first marriage. When Chief Walker arrived at the home to investigate, Thu's mother answered the door insisting she was alone and hadn't seen anyone since the day before. She had no explanation for why the missing girl's phone had pinged at her address. The uneasy feeling of the whole situation only deepened when Walker then visited Thu's ex and the mother of his child. She, too, was growing increasingly anxious at this point. Her daughter most certainly should have been at Thu's house as far as she knew, but there was no sign of her there. Then at around noon, police received another call, this time reporting a sighting of a man who had been spotted trespassing on a property near New Lisbon. The caller described the individual as carrying a sleeping bag concealing what appeared to be a long gun. When authorities arrived at the scene, they found Thu's car abandoned, along with his keys, but no sign of him. Then came the call that would forever change the course of the day and the town. And two acquaintances of the missing 13-year-old had gone to Thu's mother's house, desperate for answers. And knowing her phone was still there, they walked in through the open front door and began searching the property. Thu's bedroom was locked, and driven by fear and frustration at this point, they forced it open. Inside, they were met with a scene of unimaginable horror. On the bed lay the lifeless bodies of Elizabeth Kolba, the 12-year-old girl, and her 13-year-old friend. All three had been shot in the head execution style, the grim reality setting quickly that this wasn't a random act of violence. It was cold, calculated, and ruthless. In the hours that followed, a disturbing portrait of Virgil Thu began to emerge. Interviews with family members revealed that he was becoming obsessively private and paranoid, and his sister confirmed that no one else would have had the keys to his room, and his mother admitted that she hadn't seen anyone else at the house in the days leading up to the murders. By January 1st, authorities had their first lead on Thu's whereabouts. A trail camera in the woods just outside New Lisbon captured his image. And he was alone and on foot and very much alive. Law enforcement issued a statewide alert warning that Thu was armed and dangerous.
New Lisbon police releasing this new photo of a 47-year-old man, Virgil Thu. It was taken at a Dollar General store in New Lisbon one day before the bodies of 33-year-old Elizabeth Kolba and two young girls were found at a New Lisbon home.
As of the making of this, Thu remains at large. Local authorities have enlisted the help of federal agencies, including the FBI and U.S. Marshals Service, in their desperate search for the fugitive. While New Lisbon mourns the tragic loss of three of its members, the community remains on edge, knowing that Thu could really be anywhere. The woods surrounding the town could be his hiding spot for now, and who knows what his next move might be. If he gets desperate, which is likely, he might be willing to do more unthinkable acts. So stay vigilant and on the lookout. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Virgil Thu, authorities urge you to contact 911 immediately. Number 4. The Bones Beneath Fox Hollow Farm. It all started with a discovery no child should ever make. In 1994, sunny afternoon on a sprawling 1 million estate in Westfield, Indiana, turned terrifying when a 13-year-old boy stumbled upon something in the woods of his family's property. A skull, human, resting on top of a pile of bones. For Herb Baumeister, the boy's father, the explanation came effortlessly, as if he had rehearsed it 100 times before. He claimed the skeleton was an old medical specimen his late father, a respected anesthesiologist, had acquired during his training. It seemed plausible enough, at least to his family, but the truth was infinitely more disturbing. Herb's case is one that is honestly one of the craziest we've ever covered, and we did so at length in a video dedicated entirely to what he had done. So if you want all the details of what he did, then go check that out. I'll link it in the description below. But this update is about how the authorities are now working to solve the case and put names to the victims. And maybe you or someone you know can actually help.
Hopeful that forensic advancements will allow investigators to take these once discarded remains buried at Fox Hollow Farms and finally give families answers and allow them to say goodbye to their loved ones.
And 2 years after the skull was found, Herb's explanation unraveled completely when authorities uncovered an entire graveyard hidden in plain sight. Thousands of human bones and bone fragments were unearthed on the 18-acre property known as Fox Hollow Farm. Each fragment told a story, lives of young men who had vanished without a trace. The day after investigators began unearthing the grisly evidence, Baumeister disappeared. And 8 days later, he was found dead in Canada because he chose not to face the music for the crimes he had committed. And from the mid-1980s to the early 1990s, dozens of men had disappeared across Indiana and nearby states. Baumeister is believed to have lured many of them back to Fox Hollow Farm, where their lives were brutally cut short. And so the sprawling property became his killing field, with the remains of at least 25 victims scattered and burned to conceal his atrocities. Though, maybe there's many more. And for decades, many of the victims at the farm were faceless and nameless, but now modern technology has begun to rewrite that narrative. In 2022, Hamilton County Coroner Jeff Jellison launched a renewed effort to identify the remains left behind by Herb. Using cutting-edge genetic genealogy, investigators are starting to piece together the identities of these men, one DNA profile at a time. And to date, 3 victims have been identified, each discovery bringing a mix of relief and heartbreak to their families. In May of 2024, for example, Jeffrey Jones of Fillmore, Indiana, was confirmed as one of Baumeister's victims. Jones had been missing since 1993, and his remains among those recovered in 1996. Before him, investigators identified Alan Livingston in October of 2023, another young man lost to Baumeister's depravity. And these advances are offering hope that more victims will be identified, but the scope of Baumeister's crimes remains staggering. With over 10,000 bone fragments recovered, investigators think there still could be dozens of unidentified victims out there. Some may never be known, but they're certainly going to try. And for families searching for closure, there's still a chance to help. DNA reference samples submitted to the Indiana State Police or the Hamilton County Coroner's Office could finally link the missing to the macabre history of Fox Hollow Farm.
You want to provide those people with a final resting place. And really the only way we can do that is to identify them. It's huge to have closure.
But right now, if anyone you know went missing around that area of Indiana back when Herb was in the midst of his reign of terror, well, the authorities want to hear from you. Because that person's loved one could hold the key in their own DNA. So reach out to the Hamilton County Coroner's Office at 317-770-4415. Number 3. A killer in uniform. They say you never truly know someone, and that becomes glaringly clear with this story that revolves around a law enforcement officer, a figure of trust and authority, who was living a double life as a predator. Back in the early hours of November 5th of 1979 at a convenience store in Ridge Harbor, Florida, a sheriff's deputy named John Greer radioed dispatch to report a grisly discovery. The body of 25-year-old Adele Easterly, an assistant manager at the farm store, was dead. She'd been shot twice, once in the back and once in the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. And the killer, according to Greer, had escaped with a mere $7.34. But something about Greer's story never really sat right with his colleagues. Investigators questioned Easterly's friends and acquaintances to see if anyone they knew may have been a suspect, but there was nobody suspicious in Adele's world. Greer's role as the discoverer of the crime scene should have made him a hero, but whispers of suspicion lingered. And the reason being is because just a few months earlier, on August 27th, Greer had placed another chilling call to the sheriff's office. And this time, it was to report the death of his wife, Jackie. He claimed she had unalived herself in their Port Charlotte home. While investigators found the circumstances suspicious, they couldn't gather enough evidence to challenge Greer's narrative. And really, a part of them never wanted to. That thin blue line holding strong, nobody wants to incriminate one of their own. But eventually, if somebody keeps on pushing the boundaries, well, something's got to give. And the pattern continued when on October 3rd of 1980, a female friend of Greer's was found dead in her car with empty pill bottles and a note she left nearby. The sheriff's office labeled it as an overdose, but her husband painted a darker picture. And he alleged that Greer had been stalking his wife and attempting to coerce her into a relationship. Again, the lack of definitive evidence allowed Greer to walk away unscathed. And so for decades, Greer just seemed untouchable. When the heat was on him, and he became a pariah among his colleagues, he just resigned from the sheriff's office and moved on to work for other law enforcement agencies all across Florida. And meanwhile, the families of his alleged victims were left pointing the finger, but that seemed to be all they could do, and Greer walked as a free man. In 2016, the Charlotte County Cold Case Unit reignited the investigation into Adele Easterly's murder. They issued a statement suggesting that a law enforcement officer may have been involved, hoping to coax new witnesses to come forward. And it worked. A former sheriff's office explorer came forward recounting a horrifying story of assault and a haunting confession. An explorer is a program used to introduce young people, ages 14 to 20, into the careers available in law enforcement. She revealed that on the exact night of Easterly's murder, she had seen Greer with literal blood on his hands. Armed with this testimony, the Cold Case Unit built a case against Greer. By 2023, they had gathered enough evidence to confront him. Investigators then traveled to Tennessee, where Greer was living in a healthcare facility. And during their interview, the 76-year-old former deputy made a shocking admission. He killed both Adele Easterly and his wife Jackie.
So he was paying attention and he knew what was going on. When they talked about Adele, when they talked about Jackie, he acknowledged that he was involved in their shootings.
But true justice would elude the victims and their families one final time on this one. Greer passed away in March of 2024, just months before he could be formally charged. Number 2. The Zipper. It was a freezing February morning in Council Bluffs, Iowa, when Eileen Gowen's body was found discarded in a roadside ditch. She was 60 years old, a mother and a beloved figure in her community. The sight was haunting, her body awkwardly slumped, frozen in the harsh winter conditions. But what truly shook those who loved her wasn't just the loss. It was the questions that immediately arose. How'd she end up here? Eileen's last known movements were captured on surveillance footage. as she was seen leaving her job at Sugar's Lounge and Diner on February 12th of 2023, stepping into a Ford F-150 belonging to her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Ivan Sam Brommer. Hours later, traffic cameras picked up the truck once again. Inside, Eileen appeared slumped and motionless. When her body was finally recovered 2 weeks later, she was still wearing the same outfit from that surveillance footage, save for a missing shoe. Her phone and purse were gone, as was a personal safe containing $1,200 in cash. Interestingly, on February 15th, 3 days after she was last seen alive, Brommer deposited exactly $1,200 into his own account. Just 10 days after that, he brought his truck to a salvage yard to have it destroyed.
My girlfriend, me and her broke up, and she moved in with a guy.
Okay.
And she's been missing since Monday. They're trying to locate her right now.
It seemed obvious, damning even, that Ivan had done this, but despite all these suspicious actions, police lacked the hard evidence needed to connect him directly to her death. And the autopsy results didn't help matters either. The assistant state medical examiner listed Eileen's cause of death as unknown. Multiple abrasions and contusions on her body, a broken tooth and laceration on her scalp were noted, but none were deemed life-threatening. A toxicology report revealed only nicotine and a prescription drug in her system, hardly enough to explain her death. But Eileen's family refused to give up. Desperate for answers, they turned to renowned forensic pathologist, Dr. Michael Baden. Known for his ability to spot what others missed, Baden was their last hope. And as he pored over the reports and photographs of Eileen's body, something unusual caught his attention. Around her neck, faint but unmistakable, was a unique imprint. And to the untrained eye, it might have been dismissed as a random bruise. To Baden, it was a signature, a pattern left behind by the teeth of a zipper. Baden explained in court, "The imprint told me what happened. It didn't tell me who did it, that's for the police, but it told me how she died." He had seen similar marks in other cases. The distinctive pattern suggested that Eileen had been strangled in a chokehold, with her attacker's arm pressing her neck against a zipper.
There was traumatic asphyxia due to neck compression.
And do you have an opinion as to manner of death?
Yes.
And what is your opinion?
Homicide.
Okay.
It was a chilling detail that completely changed the course of the case. The evidence, combined with his suspicious actions, like depositing that stolen cash and destroying his truck, painted a damning picture. And he was convicted of murder, abuse of a corpse, and theft. And Brommer received a 65-year sentence for that, ensuring he would never harm another person again. And for Eileen's family, the verdict was bittersweet. And justice had been served, but the void left by her absence could never be filled.
This is so very difficult for me to lose my daughter, but in such a horrible way.
In the end, it wasn't just a zipper imprint that solved the case. It was a family's refusal to let their mother's death go unanswered. Number 1. A Halloween Nightmare. Halloween is most of us true crime lovers' favorite holiday because it's fun to dress up, watch scary movies, and nibble on candy. But in Hemp Hill, Texas, October 31st of 2020, will become memorable for something much darker than the usual. It was a night that of course began with fun, but ended with an unbearable crime. Livy Lewis was just 19 years old when she was found early on Halloween morning, unresponsive in her car on the side of a rural road. A closer look revealed a single gunshot wound to her neck that had ended her life. And nearby, her ex-boyfriend, Matthew Edgar, was discovered in the fetal position behind her car, claiming he had no memory of the events that had transpired. And just hours before this, Livy was at a little pre-Halloween party hosted by her friend Bobby Ozzen. Among the guests were Edgar and his ex-wife Montana Bockel. Though Livy had ended her relationship with Edgar weeks earlier, the two still crossed paths that night, a volatile mix as it turned out. Witnesses later recounted how Livy and Montana seemed to be enjoying the evening, deliberately ignoring Edgar, though as the party wound down around 2:30 a.m., the tensions flared. And Edgar, having left earlier, returned to Ozzen's house, only to overhear plans for Livy to spend the night there. And consumed by a jealous rage, he lashed out violently, attacking his ex-wife, who he saw as being the person who allowed this to happen. Outside, he then kicked her car several times, while Ozzen stepped in and tried to restrain him. While that was going on, Livy and Bockel fled. And Bockel sought refuge at Edgar's grandparents' house, but Livy's whereabouts during those crucial moments remained unclear. While at his grandparents' home, Edgar and Bockel exchanged heated texts. Edgar accused Bockel of betraying him. At 3:34 a.m., Bockel texted him, asking where Livy was, and his simple response, dead. This message would become a pivotal piece of evidence, because it showed investigators that Edgar was likely already at the scene of the crime by this time. Livy's car was parked on the roadside, and Edgar's cousin's pickup truck was positioned behind it. According to investigators, Livy appeared calm, sitting in her car with her legs crossed, likely unaware of the real danger she was in. And at 5:15 a.m., a passerby stopped to check on the vehicle parked on the side of that road. Inside, they found Livy slumped over with Edgar, bloodied and dazed, close by.
911. No, somebody's dead.
So what are they looking like yelp when there was gunshot wound?
As investigators combed the scene, they found a rifle in the nearby grass. Ballistic analysis later linked the weapon to the bullet fragment found in Livy's car. Additionally, a single drop of Livy's blood was discovered on Edgar's pants, a detail Edgar's defense team would later attempt to dismiss as circumstantial. At the hospital, Edgar continued to deny any involvement, insisting he had blacked out after drinking a bottle of whiskey. But the evidence against him was mounting. Within a few hours, he would be formally arrested for murder.
There is a weapon laying on the ground behind the vehicle, close to where you were found. Based on that and a few other things, I'm gonna place you in custody right now for homicide, okay?
On January 4th of 2022, Edgar then stood trial for the crime. The prosecution presented their case filled with text messages, forensic evidence, and witness testimonies, painting a picture of a man driven by jealousy and rage to commit a cold-blooded killing. But then, just 2 days into the trial, Edgar vanished. Letting his ankle monitor's battery die, he then fled into the night. His sudden disappearance turned the trial into a media spectacle, and in absentia, he was convicted of Livy's murder, receiving a 99-year sentence. For nearly a year after that, Edgar was able to elude authorities. Livy's mother, Darcy Bass, refused to let her daughter's killer slip away unnoticed, and she took matters into her own hands, plastering wanted posters around town, and urging the public to help bring the man to justice. And finally, in 2022, Edgar was found hiding just yards away from his grandparents' home, a fugitive brought down by the weight of his own proximity to the crime. On January 3rd of 2023, Matthew was formally sentenced to 99 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 30. And for Livy's family, the sentence brought some closure, but could never undo the pain of losing her. So there were the strange and scary mysteries of the month for January 2025. If you did enjoy this, please remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we're putting out our new content. We also have some new merch out, so if you want to support us, check out that link down below. Get yourself a cool shirt or sweatshirt. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.